Greetings and welcome. My name is Jake Rayson. I am a forest gardener and forest garden designer, and this is my regular Wednesday morning forest garden live stream at 10 o'clock. 10 o'clock British summertime, whatever time we're doing, Cardiff time, London time, you name it. That's the time that's on Wednesdays at 10 o'clock, pretty much every single Wednesday. And I do a live stream, and it can be anything about any topic to do with forest gardening, and also to if I'm out and about in the garden, very often I'll just talk about a particular part of the gardening that I'm doing, whether it's mulching or planting or a particular plant. So today I am very lucky because I have a new client. Well, I've known her for quite a while. It's Annette, who's on the Forest Garden group, and she's very kindly let me talk about her project as an example for the live stream. So I get to talk about forest garden design from scratch for a new project and the kind of considerations in it, and hopefully you can see what there is in the approach to it, so you get an idea about how to approach a particular design in terms of forest gardening. So thank you so much, Annette, for that, for the opportunity to do this, and it's good as well because it's got me thinking about her garden too, to be able to put it all together for today's live stream. The talks online. There's a few notes. Yeah, there's a few notes. forestgarden.wales/talks/scratch. Press P on the keyboard, and you get the notes up as well. And a big shout out to Dan, who is at work today, so he can't make it to the live stream, and also thank you to Chris for the photograph of ox-eye daisies, and to Rob for the photograph of the what on earth are they called? The artichoke flower. It's amazing. Anyway, let's move on. So today, what I'm going to be talking about, firstly, is the setup, and I'll just kind of quickly go through the different tools that I use. I've done this before, but I think it's always kind of interesting to emphasize that design is about communication. There is design in the actual creation of the garden and your ideas about how the garden can fit together and how it can work, but also there's design. Large part of it, part of the design process, is communicating so that people can see your ideas. What I wanted to do to be at this stage, but I'm not. But I really wanted to have a lot of sketches of different shapes and ideas and sizes and stuff. But this is much more kind of like, this is the first kind of general impressions of the site, and the kind of my kind of ideas about that, and the next step. Because but this is necessary. This is the kind of this is all the planning and the sitting down with a piece of paper and working out what it is that you want, and writing things down and getting some ideas down on paper. And it's all kind of very rough, woolly stage. It's not the kind of nice. We can have this particular shaped tree here, and these are the shrubs that we can have, and this is the ground cover that will fit in perfectly. There's not that kind of level of detail yet. But anyway, this is the kind of the first part. So setup, I'll talk about the setup, the tools that I use. What do you want? Probably the most important question in your life. As in, what do you want? What do you want to be? What do you want to achieve? What do you want your garden to look like? How do you want it to fit in? And it's a real kind of fundamental question. Listing the attributes and just kind of getting these ideas. Ask the question and then listen to the answers. And get the answers down. So what do you want? What are you aiming for? What's the purpose of this? What is so fantastic about forest gardening, for people who aren't watching? So forest gardening is a working with nature to grow edible crops. It's a shorthand phrase. It's creating an edible ecosystem. At the very heart of it is the idea that you're working with natural processes, so you have less work to do yourself. And this can actually form part of the initial question: is you're gardening for wildlife. You're getting produce at the end of it. You're getting edible produce at the end of it. But it is the key idea is that you are actually gardening for, you are gardening for the whole ecosystem, for the whole garden. It's not just about you, and it's not just about what crop you get. It's about the whole space. So for me, that is fantastic. That is a brilliant starting point. and there are so many avenues. I mean, I'm absolutely amazed constantly at the amount of stuff out there, the amount of really, really interesting, just engaging and avenues to explore in terms of gardening. For example, Lyndon Hawthorne on Twitter tweeted the other day about bird's foot trefoil, and there's 39 species of macro moth that's like big moths as opposed to tiny macro moths. 39 species that use that have an interaction with birdfoot trefoil, and that is just incredible. That just you got one species and it has this role to play in the ecosystem, and there's 39 different species of moths about which I know practically zero. It's just incredible. There's just all this knowledge out there and all these interactions and all this stuff to learn. So that's brilliant thing about forest gardening, is that it is all based around wildlife. Then I want to talk about being there and the importance of, if you possibly can, I do remote forest garden design as well, but if you can be there, be on site. You need to kind of be in the place, and then it's the consideration. So this is the where you get your big list of your answer to your question, what do you want, the space that you have, and that all comes together, and then you think about what it is that you can do in that space. And it's kind of brilliant because it's really, really exciting at the beginning, because you can do anything within means. You can do anything. You can have a whole range of different ideas. You can just come up with just so many different things to play around with. So it's brilliant. And then finally is looking at the budget. So I'll just kind of broadly look at the budget in terms of time, energy, and money. So which is good. And this is and what's so lovely about doing garden design for other people as well. A lot of my own projects I kind of do a little bit here, and then it's like 5 years later I'll do another bit there. And it's particularly because the garden we were doing tours last year, but not this year because of COVID, but particularly because tours were all put on hold. This means that I haven't, the garden's a bit of a state, and there's stuff growing which I really need to kind of sort out, but there isn't the pressure to kind of finish it with your own stuff. Whereas with a proper budgeted job, there's a real kind of a sense of, this is the idea of when it's going to be, the work that you do can be completed. I mean, a garden is never finished, but you can actually complete different stages of the job. And it's great because it gives a real focus to it as well. So without further ado, let's get on to setup. This is the setup that I have for pretty much every single client. The first thing I do is just to set up a kind of framework. I have online notes. So like a lot of this stuff that I'll be talking about today, a lot of the sketches and the ideas, I'll put them into a simple note, which is, hold on, I'll just show you here actually. Hold on. Pen Parquet. So simple note. It's a kind of, this is kind of like simple note. You write text down, and then the text appears up on the screen, and it's just a brilliant way, really, it's basic, hence the name, but it's a brilliant way of communicating ideas and writing things down that you've agreed upon and putting them onto the web, and then people can see what it is that what it is that you've been discussing. Obviously just starting off the job, so there isn't much information there at the moment. And then I have 2 pages. I have a home page and a schedule, and the schedule is where I'll put down the different blocks of work that need to be sorted out. And then the other things that I have are Cloudinary for photographs. I use Cloudinary. It's a brilliant service. If you ever get into taking a lot of photographs for whatever job that you're doing, if you're taking photographs, resize them, create a free account, upload them to Cloudinary, and then you can share them and use them on websites and use them to store things and sort them and all sorts. It's brilliant service. A very, very cheap way of doing it. Google Sheets, I use that for collecting photographs, as I call the client photographs I put into Cloudinary. Google Sheets, which I use for, I won't open it up because it will crash my computer because I'm live streaming. But Google Sheets, it's an online spreadsheet. It's great for creating lists of plants. I just have a whole list of different plants, different ideas, and then you work with the design, and then gradually you build up and whittle down build up and whittle down the list of plants that you want to use, and then you can get an idea of numbers, and you can work out costs easily as well. So it's a fantastic Google Sheets. I mean, I really don't like Google for their aggressive business model invading people's privacy, but they do make a nice spreadsheet. Pinterest, which I'm sure this is the screenshot from Pinterest here. Can I zoom in? Oh yes, I can. So this is for a client, and Pinterest is great because you talk about plants. So I don't know, I've been talking with Annette about there's a particular corner, and I was talking with Annette about a Cornus Cusa chinensis, China Girl, Galaxy. There's different varieties. And what I will do is to get one of the to use Pinterest, and I'll get photographs of a Cornus Cusa and I'll put them on, and it's a reminder for me, but also to say this is the shape of the tree. This is kind of like how it looks like when it's in blossom. This is what the fruit looks like, and so you go, oh yeah, it's a really really good kind of reference point. You can just chuck stuff in, and then you can pull things out later on that you want to kind of focus on. So really like using Pinterest. And then YouTube, again owned by Google, but what I do is to use YouTube for uploading videos, and I'll come onto this in a minute. But always, even if you live there, even take lots of videos and lots of photographs. It really does make a difference, so that when you're thinking about the space, your inaccurate memory, where you kind of like, oh yeah, I know what the garden looks like, you can actually fill in a lot of the detail, and it's incredible how many things you miss. Whereas with a video, you can go, oh yes, of course, there's concrete foundations of an old greenhouse there that I completely forgot about, or there's a telephone line goes straight across the garden. So really really good idea. Always take lots of videos of your own stuff, and then I list mine. I put mine unlisted up onto YouTube, so no one else really gets to see them. But it's a very good reference indeed. So that's what I do for all my clients. And secondly, right, so that's a kind of setup before you actually do any work. My God, I'm exhausted already. So the main question that you want to ask whenever you're doing a garden design is, what do you want? Now, it's kind of loaded question. There's an awful lot implicit in the question already. I'm a forest garden designer, so I can tell you from the beginning what I want is a forest garden. But it's really worth asking the question within that, because I think there are forest gardens and there are forest gardens, and it's more of a process. It's not like there isn't a forest garden. It depends upon who you're designing it for, what the site is, how much space there is, what's the what do you want to, how do you want to live, how do you live, have you got a full-time job, part-time job, retired, unemployed, self-employed, whatever it is, how much time do you have, are you about the house, how much work can you put to garden? It's all these kind of questions about what you want and how it fits in with your life. So there isn't a one-size-fits-all forest garden. So that's the kind of key thing to remember. It's the process and the kind of principles behind it, and then it's adapting those to each individual garden. So Annette's position is kind of like it's a beautiful old Georgian farmhouse, probably possibly older actually, but it has a Georgian render on it outside, and it's in eastern Carmarthenshire. North facing, it's the back garden. It's a small holding, so it's like an old farm, a couple of outbuildings, 2-3 outbuildings. It's a small farm, and it's got a few acres. I'm not terribly sure how many. I'd hazard a guess about 8-10 acres or something like that, possibly more depending on which fields. And then there's a back garden as well, which is about 0.4 acres, about half an acre at the back, and that's the garden that I'm working on. And it's just really, really interesting working with somebody who already has an idea about forest gardening, so I don't have to explain what it is, and then looking at the house and the situation and getting an idea about how it would fit in with the house and how it would fit in with the family, and what she likes, what her partner likes, how many members of the family there are. There's like 3 teenage children. and you just got to kind of balance all of this together, how the space is being used, and then just think about everybody in the house doing the different things and how the garden kind of fits in with that. And this is the rear of the house. I won't kind of go into much detail about about the layout or anything, but this is the rear of the house, and then you can look out upon the garden. It's north facing, which is kind of really interesting actually. North facing house, so the patio, and there's a patio at the back, and the patio is in shade quite a lot of the time. It gets a bit of westerly sun, I think, is about all the sun that it does get, and that's only during the summer. So kind of very, very interesting space. So there's a slope, so it runs from west to east is a slope, and it's north facing, so kind of interesting setup. And what I'm getting from Annette as well is the idea of a foraging, like the whole idea of a forest garden is that it's productive, but it really is like foraging in your backyard. It's being able to go out and go, oh, let's have a look and see what's growing and seeing what's in season and picking it. So she went on a foraging course the other day, and it sounded fantastic. And I had a look at the book when I was there as well. Nadell, I can't remember her name. Can't remember. Adele, nope, can't remember it. Anyway, very, very interesting, and it ties in perfectly this idea of foraging and being in nature, being outside in the wild, but also having the wild in your back garden and being able to forage in your back garden as well. There was kind of, I think it was, what's his face? Not George Monbiot, the other one. There's a guy, the cook, who looks like George Monbiot. Is nothing like George Monbiot at all. I can't remember his bloody name. Anyway, he had a foreword to a forest garden book, and he said, it is like foraging in your own garden. I just remember that. That's like, that's a really kind of interesting take on what a forest garden is. So, and beautiful as well. It's a beautiful house. It's a really lovely house, and it's just there is an airiness and a lightness about it. And it's just kind of capturing that in the garden as well. So I think keeping it light and keeping it kind of like an elegance to it. So I think that's really, really nice. There's a very nice feel to the house, and it's just kind of getting that feel into the garden. So forageable and beautiful and low maintenance. I think this is absolutely key thing about any forest garden, is that it is low maintenance. I mean, I kind of transformed my own perennial vegetable garden into annual vegetable garden into perennials, and I am so thankful that I've done it. It's been one of the biggest changes. I still grow tomatoes, and I still swear at the tomatoes every single time I have to go out and twist them up and take out the side shoots and da. Whereas with perennial vegetables, you can, once they're established, you can pretty much leave them to get on with their job. You still do need to weed, and you still need to harvest and kind of make sure things don't grow over the top of them and all the rest of it. But it's low maintenance, and I kind of struck by the idea with a lot of gardening that once a garden gets established, then most gardens, can be low maintenance. It's that perennial plants in a garden lend themselves to filling up a space, and there's a bit of weeding, but once it's established, it's just kind of ticking over. It's just getting it to that point where the perennials are established. Low maintenance and wildlife. It's a beautiful spot where they are. It's down the track, and it's surrounded by fields, but there's quite a few trees kicking around as well, and a family garden too. But as I was saying, that the back of the house is at the back of the house is the patio, and that kind of forms a kind of focal point. So the kitchen comes out onto the patio as well, and then there's two side entrances, and there's a couple of paths that come off of the patio too. So how do you use that space? How do you kind of use the garden as a family garden, and how will people want to use it, not just for produce, but also for a living space, for kind of going out into. So I'll come on to that in a second. So get an idea. What do you want? I hope Annette kind of agrees with me what I've said. She might be there going, no, that's not what I want at all. I want clipped box hedges and very formal French style. But hopefully, yes, this is just getting the idea. So get the idea. What do you want? Answer that question for yourself, and write them down. List the attributes. This is a photograph from Chris on the Forest Garden Telegram group that we've got. And she did a lovely thing about oxeye daisies, and there's just a whole load of photographs of oxeye daisies, and I put in Julie got in and put in some photographs of poppies, I think, from her garden, and I think Rob might have added something, and then I put in some photographs of feverfew and chamomile, and it was great. It was really, really nice. And I think this photograph for me really kind of gets towards the idea of the sense of what it is that I'd like to do for the garden, which is kind of tall plants, wildflowers, and it's bordered by a wild hedge, and it's just that feel to it, that kind of idea. And I think this is what I find Pinterest so useful for as well, is that you can use it for collecting all these images and collecting all this inspiration. So listing attributes is a useful exercise. I mean, it really is. It's very useful, even if you don't use any of them. Even if you kind of say, "Oh, I want a natural swimming pool in the back garden," but just write them down. If you do want one, write them down. It's a really, really useful exercise. I think it's kind of useful in any kind of any walk of life as well. Like if you're considering something, write it, get it all out, get everything, no matter how stupid it sounds. Put it all down on a piece of paper, and then you can always cross stuff off. You don't have to go with everything. And be explicit. Say what it is that you're really after. The more explicit you are, then the more likely you are to have it. Because if you know what the thing is that you want, then you know how you can work towards it. I just wrote a list of things: wildlife, wildflower, edible, graceful, low maintenance. Think of the family, house at the centre. So these are all the kind of ideas. This is my own kind of process of thinking about the project and how to do it. And as I was saying before, use Pinterest. If you do, uBlock Origin is an ad blocker and a tracker blocker. I totally recommend using that one if you can get it on Chrome and Firefox, I think. So if you do use Pinterest, I use an ad blocker called uBlock Origin, and that just stops all the the crappy adverts, which I think they're kind of hypnotizing. You go, wow, look at that, it's amazing. So I don't see any of that. I just see photographs. Okay, and then being there is really, really, really important. You've actually just get on the you've got to be there if you possibly can. If you can't be there, as I was saying, I do kind of remote design. If you can't be there, then use video, lots and lots of video, to get a sense of the place. But being there really is kind of very, very important. I think I was there for 4 or 5 hours, 5 hours or so on last week, and it makes such a difference. And I just spent a lot of time talking about the garden, what people wanted from the garden, and the different ideas and different projects going on, and water supplies and greenhouse and foraging and all these different things. And just kind of, you need to find out the different stories and to find out about the place as well. And it's very important to talk to the people who live there about the space, because there's a real danger that you can go, oh yes, I've seen the house and I've seen the garden and I know it, but no, you don't. It's just the beginning. You've really got to explore, and the people who explore the most are the people who live there. So the people who live there will know where the damp patches are, will know where the fox runs through the garden, or will know where the which is the kind of the shadiest spot in the depths of winter. So yeah, it's find out these things. And walk the paths. I think it was Wittgenstein, philosopher Wittgenstein, who said, I can't remember I can't remember the quote at all, but this idea of, philosophy is about exploration and about understanding. And once you understand, then you don't need to explain it anymore because you understand it. And it's rather analogous to a city, getting to know a city. And the best way to get to know a city is to walk every path, and is to walk every road and every side street and every alley, and from different directions, and hook things, link things up together, and get to know them. And it really is that sense, like in a garden. Walk the paths, go up to the furthest corner where nobody goes, and go around the back and come in from different points and go out from different points. And I took maybe, I think it was 18 different videos when I was there. And it's just really, really useful, because then you kind of go, you get to see how things fit together, and you get a sense of the space and a sense of the plants that are growing there, and how it all kind of fits together as well. And take lots and lots of photographs and lots of video too. What was I going to do now? Oh, that was it. I was just going to have I got QCAD? I've got QCAD up here. So this is satellite. So I've done a bit of work already. This is like a satellite photograph into CAD, and then what I've done. So this is the land here, and the back garden. And yeah, it's kind of very, very exciting. This is the north facing, south facing house, patio at the back, raised beds already, lots of different elements in place, and yeah, brilliant. Really, really, really enjoyed it. Can't really get a sense of the house from that. And just, I'll put this on mute. I'm going to play a video. Yes. Will it work? Oh, I don't know if it'll work or not. Will it work? I'll try it. Yes. Okay, I'm not going to have the sound on because it's just me talking about different things. But you get, this is the back of the garden, and you get this sense, and this is the hill, so you got the hill. Oh, it's going to buffer. And the hedgerows. So just that, you know, then there's hours and hours of that. Oh, come on. There we go. Righty, so be there, take lots of videos and use that as a reference material. And this comes in really, really useful. I will, you know, all well and good. I will be going back. Let me see if I can show you this. And I shall be, where is it? There it is. Oh yeah. So taking measurements. So this is the first kind of the first meeting, the initial meeting, getting the ideas together, seeing what it is that you looking at the space, getting the reference material. Really, I ought to have measured up in that time as well. But that is a kind of day's work in its own. That is a day's work to do it accurately. It is it's quite a lot to do. But it's kind of really, really important to get the measurements in, because then when you're designing it in terms of the size of the trees, you know exactly how much space you're playing around with. So I think more important, because there's specific things that I would like to do, and specific plants I would like to use, and size beds. And if I don't get the measurements accurately, any of the design that I do, they will then be out on the ground. What I'm trying to say is, I have a kind of quite a clear idea, which I'll come on to in a minute, about the types of beds that I would like to use, but they're quite specific widths, and I just need to make sure that I can get them in to fit. And if I don't measure up, then it's not gonna then I'll be out, and it'll be a lot more work to get all the different beds to fit together. So if it was just like, oh, this area here will be this, and there's a path going through it, that's fine. But I've got a kind of like an idea of, not formal, but more kind of more concentrated kind of beds at the back of the house. So I'll come on to that in a second. But that's important to do. It's important to get the measurements right. And once you get the measurements, so I'll do the measurements on the paper, and I started doing them, but kind of basically ran out of time. Once you get the measurements on the paper, then you can put them onto CAD. And then I'll adjust all the measurements using the satellite photo as a kind of guide, but working from the measurements being the kind of the most important thing. Okay, because satellite photos can be out. They're a bit vague. Where was I? Oh yes. So the considerations. So going back on this, I haven't checked any kind of questions. I'll come on to the questions in a minute. If there's any kind of chat, I'll come on to it in a second. So considerations for it. Firstly is the home location. So this actual slide is mostly taken from my backyard forest creating a backyard forest course, online course on udemy.com. And most of these 4 of these points are on the course, but it's worth iterating, just kind of worth going through what the things to consider are. Firstly is the location of the home. Really, really important that you go into the house. I mean, I didn't much, and I will do more of it, when I return and do kind of proper measuring up. I guess an interesting fly. When I do more measuring up, I will go back, because you need to know where the entrances and exits are to the house, so that where the flow of people will be. So someone arrives at the house, which door do they go into? They're in the kitchen, how do they come out onto the patio? They're upstairs in their bedroom, what can they see from their room when they're looking out onto the garden? And which rooms can you see what from? And it's this sense of relationship to the house. So everything's in relation to the house. That this is the location, this is the situation of the house, and you've got to work from that. So that's the first thing. Consider like where all the doors are, what the flow is of people, anything that you would like to change. There's a couple of paths that would be good to make more proper paths in the garden straight away. There's a couple of entrance points on the next garden that would be good to sort out. And then the paths. So paths, they give access to an area, but they also define an area as well. So what is a brilliant thing to do, and what I plan to be doing, is you cut the grass down. So it's like mostly long grass, and I don't know, about half of the garden, I think, and it's kind of like long grass. And then if you cut it back using a hedge cutter or a scythe, a brush cutter or a scythe, then you can use a lawnmower on a lower setting, and you can define the paths. And it's a really nice way of working out. You've got to work it out on paper, but on the design itself, but then work out the paths with a lawnmower, and then you can walk them and see if they fit with with how everything, to see if the paths fit with the design, and to see if the paths fit with the garden. And then a critical thing as well, in all of this, always kind of consider, for any kind of consideration, is aspect of the sun. I have an app on here called, what's it called? Sun Surveyor. And Sun Surveyor is like a really, really, really good app. It's a bit crappy on mine, actually. Very working. So you can't really see it all. There's me. And it tells you, it gives you the position of the sun in the sky. So it's very useful for working out where the sun will be at different times of the year, because in the winter the sun is lower, and in the summer the sun is higher, and it sets in different places as well. So you can see how much light a particular area will get. And this is good for all sorts, for different plants and for different locations. Like for where do you put the seat to get the sun in the morning? If you want the sun in the morning in the middle of winter, and you go outside and you manage to grab a cup of coffee in the freezing early morning sun, where gets the sun? And it just, you have to be able to check things like that. And for plants, obviously you want plants like full sun. You need to put them in full sun. So for the house, this is like really, it's kind of really, really nice job. You can see here the patio is in shade, and I can't help myself, but the idea, but that's south facing, so north border here. This area where the cursor is right here, this will get loads of sun, and that focus on that part, and then put the taller plants behind. So what I'm thinking of is like a natural amphitheater or a Super Bowl, but it's the sense that the plants grow higher as they go back, and there's a focal point in the center which you can see from the house. So there's a kind of counterpoint to the house, so you've got that, you can see the house, and you've got you've got a seating area which is looking back into the house, but that gets the full sun. And it's also worth bearing in mind as well, at different times of the year, in terms of the succession of the plants that you're growing, and this is like getting more into the aesthetics of it, but the plants that you grow, what time of the year do they come into flower? So you want to have a succession of flowers across the year, so it's not just like way, here goes the I don't know, think of an early spring plant. Comfrey goes off early in the morning, early in the year, and then that's it. There's nothing else apart from comfrey, and it's just a kind of green, which is fine. But you can also put in other flowers as well. Likewise, if you think about the position of the seats that you have, the seating areas or the working areas, that in the summer you actually want the shade to sit in, but in the spring and the autumn, then you would want to be in the, maybe you want to be sunnier, or maybe somewhere in between with a kind of part shade. So it changes across the year, and it's kind of being aware of that, the space that you're using. But that's the kind of, this idea of a super bowl, and then you get the sun from the back of the house comes in, and that's the sunniest part, and it's also almost like a stage for the house. So you're looking out, and it's a stage is set, and it's just kind of nicely defined as well by the height of the plants. Anyway, getting a bit ahead of myself. Other thing to do as well, I haven't done this yet, is look at the soil, the pH and the structure. What type of soil do you have determines what kind of plants you have. Kind of interesting talking to Annette. There's one end of the garden's had quite a lot of vegetables and plants already on it, and it's quite rich, and the other end is less so. So bear that in mind. It's not a bad thing. You can always add organic material, will improve quote unquote the soil, but there are an awful lot of plants that don't like rich soil. So thyme, I think, in my kind of experience, I've got in some compost, and the bloody thing won't grow. So I need to kind of not just use such rich compost. So soil, pH and structure, once you know what it is, you can amend it, or you can plant something suitable. And then the structure, the space and the shape of the garden, this is what I'm saying about being there. And then plants, this is an ongoing process, know the size of your plants, if they're native or not native, how much sun they require, how much moisture they require, and for some reason there's a number 2 in there as well. Okay, so the general ideas then, 3 areas. So you've got the patio, which I think has been, there's quite a lot you can do with the patio, and I've got some various ideas about that. But rather than just being an empty space, you kind of want to be able to use the space, but also put some other kind of useful things in there, which I won't go into any kind of detail on that yet. The Super Bowl, as I was saying before, kind of focal point is actually it will be down here rather than back up there, and then look at the paths as well, and where the existing paths are and how they fit into this. And then there's the kind of woodland vegetable area, up here. So there's a greenhouse, and there's an existing raised beds, and a greenhouse been put in a propagation area, and how you tie those 3 kind of areas in. So that's the kind of overarching kind of idea of, this is what's going on. Trees laid and relating to the house as well. Yeah, and what I'd love to do, and this is a sketch on a piece of paper, but you kind of get the idea. Go patio, sun trap, kind of Super Bowl, which is layered up and kind of provides a focal point, and a kind of vegetable garden to the side. Not vegetable garden, but like a woodland garden to the side. And then more ideas, edible ornamentals, and this is the thing. It's like kind of forest gardening anyway, but I think just this idea that it doesn't have to be green and boring. You can actually have a lot of fun with the different plants that you're using. Artichoke. This is a photograph from Rob. Thank you, Rob. And just being able to use the artichoke, use kind of architectural plants, and you can eat them as well, and they're ornamental. So just explore all the different kind of edible ornamentals and experiment as well. And then wildflowers. I mean, there's a whole big thing about using wildflowers. I think it's fantastic. I have a whole kind of project, Garden Wild, about using wildflowers in ornamental gardening. So I'm learning more about them. Woodland glades. I just love the idea, this kind of sense of enclosed space and secret little rooms being formed by different heights of shrubs and trees, smaller trees and larger trees at the back on the northern boundary. Interplanting the patio. This is, there's an awful lot you can do with the planting on a patio. It doesn't have to be a set of slabs. You can take up certain slabs, put gravel down, plant kind of free draining plants that like free draining soil, and it's kind of interesting. And foraging native plants. So more ideas. Did I do that? Oh yeah. And then finally budget. So I've kind of gone massively over on this, on my budget for today, my budget of time. So for the budget, there's the time, money, and energy involved, and I was thinking about this, and I was thinking like a forest garden emulates a woodland edge. Currently, in the next garden, it's mostly grass, and I think it's worth thinking about different types of energy, and then shifting to different equilibriums. You have different equilibriums. So woodland edge is one equilibrium which requires less maintenance. Grass is another equilibrium, and then annual vegetables is another equilibrium. And I used to work at a market garden, and it was always about weeding every single day, and watering every single day, and harvesting every single day. It was, it's proper full-on work, high energy work as well. So in a garden, the next garden's around about here, and what you want to do is to kind of take it down a level of energy, so there's less energy required to maintain it at that state, but there's an initial rise. There's an initial rise in the energy first of all. So if you kind of think about this, that's the kind of work that gets done on to create the forest garden, is that hump there, and it's just getting over that hump to shift to a lower energy equilibrium. And I really think I've been thinking about this. I think it's a really good idea if you can afford it, and if you can afford it, then do it. Then do the whole lot. I wish here that I'd concentrate on one garden rather than try and get 2 acres as a forest garden. I concentrated on one garden and done it properly, and then done the other one. But it is what it is. So I've got a lot of kind of restoration work to do still. But for a client, if you're designing a garden for a client, then if you can get it to that state so that they can do it for themselves, that's the thing that you want. Yeah. So it's doing all the kind of putting the framework in and getting the ground cover in and the shrubs and everything's set. So it's a question of weeding and maybe kind of moving a couple of plants around, but it's get the majority of the work done at the beginning. Yeah. So best jump now. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that. I hope that's what Annette is after. Thank you very much for watching, and I shall see you again soon. Bye.